So the book is a memoir, is about your life, and it weaves both your fascination with planets outside the solar system and the path of your life. And you lost your husband, which is a kind of central part of the book that created a feeling of the rogue planet. By the way, what's the name of the book?
The name of the book is The Smallest Lights in the Universe.
What's up with the title? What's the meaning?
Well, the title has a double meaning. On the face of it, it's the search for other Earths. Earths are so dim compared to the big, bright, massive star beside them. Searching for the Earths is like searching for the smallest lights in the universe. But it has this other meaning too. I really hope that you or the other people listening never get to the place where you've fallen off the cliff into this horrible place of huge despair. And once in a while, you get a glimmer of a better life, of some kind of hope. And those are also the smallest lights in the universe.
Well, maybe we can tell the full story before we talk about the glimmer of hope. What did it feel like to first find out that your husband, Mike, was sick?
It was incredibly frustrating. Like lots of us have had some kind of problem that the doctors completely ignore. Just that they kept blowing him off. It's nothing. Are they paid to just say it's nothing? I mean, it's just insane. I was just so angry. And we finally got to a point where he was really sick. He was like in bed, not able to move, basically. And it turned out all the things they ignored and not done any tests, he had like a 100% blockage in his intestine, like 100%. Like nothing could get out, nothing could get in. And it was pretty shocking to even hear then that it could be nothing.
What was the progression of it in the context of maybe the medical system, the doctors? I mean, what did it feel like? Did you feel like a human being?
I felt like a child. Like the doctors were trying to water down the real diagnosis or treat us like we couldn't know the truth or they didn't know. You know, I felt mixed. Like it's not a good situation if you think the doctor either has no idea what he or she is doing or if the doctor's purposely, let's just say, lying to you to sugarcoat it. Like I didn't know which one of it was, but I knew it was one of those.
What were the things he was suffering from?
Well, initially, he just had a random stomachache. I hate to say that out loud because I know a lot of people will have a random stomachache.
Yeah.
But so he just had a bad stomachache and then, this is weird. A few days later, another bad stomachache, kind of gets worse. Might go away for a few weeks, might come back. And at the time, all I knew was my dad had that same thing. Not the same identical system, but he had these really weird pains. And he ended up having the worst diagnosis. One of the worst diagnoses you can get from a random stomachache is pancreatic cancer. Because the pancreas, like you can't feel anything. So by the time you feel pain, it's too late. It's spread already. So I was just like beside myself. I'm like, this is like, wow, this guy, he's got a random stomachache. All I know is another man I loved had a random stomachache and it didn't end well.
How did you deal with it emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, as a scientist? What was that like? That whole, because it's not immediate. It's a long journey.
It's a long journey. And you don't know where the diagnosis is going. So anyone who's suffered from a major illness, there's like always branches in the road. So, you know, he had this intestinal blockage. I can't imagine someone in their 40s having that and that be normal. But the doctor is like, it could be nothing. Could just cut it out. You don't need most of your intestine. It's a repeating pattern. Just cut that out. It could be fine. But it ended up not being fine. And he was diagnosed as being terminally ill. Well, it really changed my life in a huge way. First of all, I remember immediately one summer, the summer when this happened, I started asking everyone I knew. I would ask you. I don't know, it's not my job to put you on the spot. Mm-hmm. I'd say, you have 1 year to live, or 2 or 3. What will you do differently about your life now? Lex, you have 1 year to live. What would you do? I mean, it's hard. I don't know if you want to answer that.
No. I think about it a lot. I mean, that's a really good thing to meditate on. We can talk about maybe how while you bring that up, why, if it is or not a heavy question, but
It's very
I
heavy.
I get I think about mortality a lot, and for me, it feels like a really good way to focus in on is what you're doing today, the people you have around you, the family you have. Is it does it bring you joy? Does it bring you fulfillment? And basically, for me, of long ago, tried to be ready to die any day. So like today, I kind of woke up looking for. I was nervous about talking to you. I really admire your work, and the book is very good, and it's a super exciting topic. But then, there's this also feeling like if this is the last conversation I have in my life, if I die today, will this be the right? Like, am I glad today happened? And it is, and I am glad today happened. So that's the way.
And that's
I
so
think
unique. I never got that answer from a single person.
the busyness of life. There's goals, there's dreams, there's like planning
And very
plans.
few people make it happen. That's what I learned. And so a lot of these people,
Oh, like you run out of time.
it's not so much you run out of time, but I'd come back later and be, well, okay, well, why don't you do that? And if that's what you would do, if you're going to die a year from now, why don't you make it real? Simple things, spend more time with family.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you do that? And no one had an answer. It turns out, unless you really do have a pressing end of life, people don't do their bucket list or try to change their career. And some people can't. So we can't, like, for a lot of people, they can't do anything about it. And that's fine. But the ones who can take action for some reason never do. And that was one of the ways that Mike's death, or at the time, his impending death, really, really affected me. Because, for these sick people, what I learned, he had a bucket list and he was able to do some of the bucket lists. It was awesome. But he got sick pretty quickly. So if you do only have a year to live, it's ironic because you can't do the things you wanted to do because you get too sick too fast.
What were the bucket list things for you that you realized, like, what am I doing with my life?
That was the major concept of him. After he died, I didn't know. Like, I was just lost, because when something that profound happens, all the things I was doing, most of the things I was doing were just meaningless. It was so tough to find an answer for that. And that's when I settled on, I'm going to devote the rest of my life to trying to find another Earth and to find that we're not alone.
What is that longing for connection with others? What's that about? What do you think? Why is that so full of meaning?
I don't know why. I mean, I think it's how we're hardwired. Like, one of my friends some time ago, actually when my dad died, he never heard someone say this before, but he's like, Sarah, why are we evolved to take death so harshly? Like, what kind of society would we be if we just didn't care people died? Like, that would be a very different type of world. How would we as a species have got to where we are? So I think that is tied hand in hand with why do we seek connection? It's just that what we were talking about before, that subconsciousness that we don't understand.
Yeah, coupled, the other side, the flip side of the coin of connection and love is a fear of loss. It's like that was, again, I don't know. It's what makes you appreciate the moment is that the thing ends.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard one. The thing ends, and it's hard to not, you wouldn't want to limit. Like, it's like my dog who I love so much, I'll start to cry. Like, I can't think about the end. I know he'll age much faster than I will, and someday it will end, right? But it's too sad to think of. But should I not have got a dog?
Right.
Should I have not brought this sort of joy into my life because I know it won't be forever?
Well, there's a philosopher, Ernest Becker, who wrote a book, Denial of Death. And just and Warm with the Cores, and there's another book that talks about terror management theory. Sheldon Solomon, I just talked to him a few weeks ago. He's a brilliant philosopher, psychologist. That their theory, whatever you make of it, is that the fear of death is at the core of everything we do. So, like, that you think you don't think about the mortality of your dog, but you do. And that's what makes the
See?
experience rich. Like there's
Right,
this
right.
kind of like in the shadows lurks the knowledge that this won't last forever. And that makes every moment just special in some kind of weird way that the moments are special for us humans. I, I mean, sorry to use romantic terms like love, but what do you make? What did you learn about love from losing it, from losing your husband?
Well, I learned to love the things I have more. I learned to love the people that I have more and to not let the little things bother me as much.
What about the rediscovery or like the discovery of the little lights in the darkness? So the book, I think you brilliantly describe the dark parts of your journey. But maybe can you talk about how you were able to rediscover the lights?
They came in many ways. And the way I like to think about it is like grief is an ocean, with tiny islands of the little, like the little lights. And eventually that ocean gets smaller and smaller and the islands like become continents with lakes. So initially it'd be like the children laughing one day,
Yeah.
or my colleagues at work who rallied around me and would take me away from my darkness to work on a project. Later on, it turned out to be a group of women my age, all widows, all with children in my town. And it would be, even though it was a bit morose getting together, still very joyful at the same time.
What was the journey of rediscovering love like for you? So refinding, I mean, is there some, by way of advice or insight about how to rediscover the beauty of life?
Of life, it's a hard one. I think you just have to stay open to being positive and just to get out there.
Do you still think about your own mortality? So you mentioned that was a thing that you would meditate on as a question when it was right there in front of you, but do you still think about it?
I think I will after talking to you. But no, it's not really something I think about. I mean, I do think about the search for another Earth, and will I get there? Will I be able to conclude my search, and is there one? Like as time goes by, that window to solve that problem gets smaller.
Huh.
So,
What would bring you, again, I apologize if this makes concrete the fact that life is finite, but what would bring you joy if we discovered while you're still here?
what would bring me joy? Finding another Earth, an Earth-like planet around a sun-like star, knowing that there's at least one or more out there, being able to see water, that it has signs of water, and being able to see some gases that don't belong. So I know that the search will continue after I'm gone, enough to fuel the next generation.
So just like opening the door, and there's
Opening the
like
door.
this glimmer of hope. What do you think it will take to realize that? I mean, we've talked about all these interesting projects, Starshade especially, but is there something that you're particularly kind of hopeful about in the next 10, 20 years that might give us that exact glimmer of hope that there's Earth-like planets out there?
I stand behind Starshade in all cases. So,
But
but there is
people-
this other kind of field that everyone is involved in, because Starshade is hard. Earths are hard. But there's another category of planet star type that's easier. And these are planets orbiting small red dwarf stars. They're not Earth-like at all. Think like Earth cousin instead of Earth twin. But there's a chance that we might establish that some of those have water and signs of life on them. That's nearer term than Starshade, and we're all working hard on that too.